shadow and without thought? Is it with these menaces to our vision, with this procession led by a man carrying wood, we must be concerned? The Holy Land, the rearing green island, should be kindlier than this. Yet the animals, our ghosts, need tending to. Take in the whipped cat and the blinded owl. Take up the man-trapped squirrel upon your shoulder. Attend to the unnecessary beasts. From growing mercy and a moderate love, great love for the human-animal occurs. And your love grows. Your great love grows and grows. So that is our chalice lighting this morning on this World Environment Day, that we might take a moment to ponder on our place in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. And now I think I'm looking at Reverend Barry to make sure. Am I turning it over to you now? Okay, welcome.
Thank you so much. Could you put that thing that I sent you, could you put it up on the screen?
Oh, yes.
So,
My glasses. Oh no, I'm going to make it bigger. Hang on.
okay. Thank you for your patience while we just deal with a technical question or a technical challenge that I have thrown to Reverend Nima.
And let me make it big.
Please, that would be really helpful.
When you're trying to do something.
It's okay. We're enjoying the moment of stillness as we sink into our presence and bring ourselves fully into this time and this day.
Is that big enough?
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
That might be too big.
That's perfect.
No.
Bigger. Otherwise I need my glasses. That's fine. Thank you.
Is that good? Okay.
Yes. Right. And scrolling happens like that. Okay. Okay. Thank you, everybody. My name is Reverend Barry Burr, and I am the Faith Leader Liaison for SAFC, Southern African Faith Leader. Sorry, let me try that again. Southern Africa Faith Communities Environment Institute. A little bit tongue-tied this morning, aren't I? So my task as Faith Leader Liaison is to really help people to understand each other and to make the circle bigger so that we unite with common purpose, no matter what our faith background. And our common purpose, one of the greatest common purposes that we have, of course, is the earth that we all have to share, this one earth. And in fact, only one earth is the theme of this year's World Environment Day. So the United Nations World Environment Day is today, the 5th of January, and it has been celebrated on this day every year since 1973. And that makes me think quite a lot, because as apparently the largest global platform for the environment, how effective have we been? So that's a question that will hang there. So the purpose of the day is to raise awareness, spread information, and nurture conversations around all aspects of this important subject, the environment. I am feeling a little bit uncomfortable that I can't see everybody. Is everybody okay? I'm hiding behind Nima's laptop, but everybody online can see me. So the United Nations tells us that Earth faces a triple planetary emergency. The climate, number one, is heating up too quickly for people and nature to adapt. Number two, habitat loss and other pressures mean an estimated 1 million species are threatened with extinction. Think about that. The International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, has listed 801 animal and plant species, mostly animal, known to have gone extinct since 1500. So that's in the Holocene age. What is interesting is that we are still identifying new species. And that means that there are probably hundreds of species that have disappeared without ever being identified. So pollution continues to poison our air, land, and water. We are using an equivalent of 1.6 Earths to maintain our current way of life, and ecosystems cannot keep up with our consumption. Our lifestyles are associated with 2/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions. Studies show that sustainable lifestyles and behaviors could reduce our emissions by 40 to 70% by 2050 if we take the decision to make the changes. But here is the good news. There is some good news. Sustainable consumption and production can drive economic development, mitigate climate change, positively impact health and pollution, and help alleviate poverty, potentially increasing incomes by an average of 11% in low and medium income countries by 2060, and 4% in high income countries. So the idea that business needs high exploitation, polluting ways of life is actually a myth. Almost 40 plant species have gone extinct in the Western Cape since 1900. So in just over 100 years. That makes us, here in the Western Cape, in the smallest biome in the world, it makes us number 2 in the world in terms of plant species lost, second only behind Hawaii. And that is purely around exploitation and greed. It's about habitat loss because people are building, and it's about human behavior. So, yeah, that's definitely something to think about. So, today's United Nations World Environment Day is not so much a celebration of a planet as a preemptive funeral for it, and a memorial ceremony for the species that once graced our beautiful planet and that have been destroyed. So, as you go down the list of causes of reduction, there is really only one, and that is greed. One of the 7 deadly sins, human encroachment on habitats, human desire for aphrodisiacs, imagined medicine, even real medicine, commercialization, exploitation, and greed of our natural medicines and resources, human need to own and to take and never, ever replace or think of having something or leaving something for those in need. So the way out of this dilemma is to transform our economies and societies and to make them inclusive, fair, and more connected with nature. This idea that humanity is somehow separate from nature, that we are different, that we don't belong, that God made nature and then God made us, or that God made us and then made nature, whichever way around you want to look at it, made nature, then made us. Really? Or were we part of the process? Are we part of the system of nature? We weren't planted here separately, mind you, depending on whose book you read. So we must return to our sacred texts, our sacred teachings, and root out the 7 deadly sins that we have become so addicted to. A world built on greed, commercialism, and exploitation cannot be a godly world. On World Environment Day, we consider the recent floods that have devastated KwaZulu-Natal, and we acknowledge that climate refugees are our own people, and we could be next. We think about war not just the one in Ukraine, which is on everybody's mind and on everybody's lips right now, but all over the world. And then right here in the Western Cape, we have a war on the Cape Flats. People are dying every day. What does that do to our environment? We human beings need to go down on our knees and beg forgiveness for our Mother Earth, that we are killing slowly and inevitably. But there's always good news, and I'm an impossibly positive person. So I want to tell you that there are solutions, and the technology to pursue the solutions is available. It does exist. And these technologies are increasingly affordable if we will only accept them. So in Cape Town, for instance, we're looking at a proposed life extension of Coburg nuclear plant, and we know that we don't need that. We know that we have renewable resources available, freely available, and that the technology to build renewable resource energy producing plants is available, is much cheaper than building nuclear, and is also much quicker than building a nuclear plant. So we also need to think about the impacts of something like a nuclear plant. So for instance, it doesn't just affect Cape Town, it doesn't just affect us, wherever that build is. It affects the fact that in the Karoo, people will be mining more uranium, and the uranium mining has already contaminated the groundwater there. So what we do here affects people hundreds of miles away. And now not only that, somewhere that waste has to be held. And we have a place called Valpit, 700 kilometers to the north. No, I'm lying. I don't get my directions right. 700 kilometers, it's in the Northern Cape. But that place has recently been allocated now not only for the medium-grade toxic waste that has been generated, but now they're going to be storing high-grade, high-level toxic waste there as well. That was recently announced in March. So what does that do? First of all, that toxic waste has to be transported. It's going to live in the earth, literally forever. We won't be here forever. How do you leave signs that will tell people hundreds of years from now, please don't dig here, because the stuff that you dig up is dangerous? How do we leave that message? And what kind of a legacy is that for our children who must inherit the earth? So, yeah, so we affect so much more. What we do affects so much more than just where we are and how we are. I also want to tell you that today is National Animal Rights Day. And National Animal Rights Day was established by the non-profit. What are we doing?
I'm just doing this so they can hear. The people who can't hear you, there's a few, they can read the transcription.
Ah, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Nima. So National Animal Rights Day was established in 2011 by the non-profit company or non-profit organization Our Planet, Theirs Too. And National Animal Rights Day is an annual day that observes in a growing number of countries around the world on the first Sunday in June for the purpose of giving a voice to all animals and raising awareness for their rights. So it's Memorial Day and Independence Day for the animals combined. So on this day, special NARD or NARD events are held in major cities around the world to commemorate the billions of animals who die every year by human hands. And there we have to think about things like industrial farming and the cruelty of a system that does not see animals as having any feeling, any value other than their commercial value. The purpose of the day is also to educate the public about the cruelty-free plant-based alternatives that we have and to celebrate the progress that is being made towards ending the suffering of animals. This day will continue to be observed until all animals are free from enslavement and their rights are established and protected by law. At SAFC, we are working very hard to free chickens. We're looking at chicken health. So if you think about the way chickens are raised in tiny, tiny little cages the size of an A4 page, trapped on wire mesh flooring that damages their claws and their feet, that where they cannot spread their wings, they cannot do any of the natural behaviors. Imagine the stress of that life, and we are consuming the stress of that animal when we eat that flesh. So that's just one example, and we have had much success in that. We've had some quite high-level organizations and hotel chains signing on to say, you know what, we're actually going to source our chickens and our eggs responsibly, and we're going to make sure that we source them from cage-free farms. So, and that's really a win, because that's a change of mindset that helps us to create a better life for all. But for this reason, I'm going to end my introductory talk with an observation. Would you mind bringing me the singing bowl? Yes. Thank you so much, Nima. I want to just give us a little bit of a taste of what we've lost. In fact, I'm going to ask you to stand next to me, Nima, and if I read that, if I say the name of the animal, I want you to gong at once. Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to give you the names of 10 creatures and also plant species that have disappeared from Africa in recent years. So 2018, the northern white rhinoceros of Kenya. 2006, western black rhinoceros of Cameroon. 2003, Osgood's Ethiopian toad from Ethiopia. 2012, Jordaniel anemoniflora from the Strand, Hermanus, and Madagascar. 2007, Pleospilus simulans from Pondoland. 11 different species of African mollusks, mostly around Mauritius. 1975, round island burrowing boa from Mauritius. 1962, Dutoy's torrent frog from Kenya. 1940, Cape Verde giant skink from Cape Verde. 1986, the Eastern Canary Islands chiffchaff of the Canary Islands. 'Thank you for listening. I'm now going to hand over to my esteemed colleague, Reverend Lionel Lowe, who is the chairperson of the Western Cape branch of the South African Council of Churches. And Reverend Lowe represents the Christian perspective. We've asked him to speak about what that means for him and for his day.
Yes, we just need to make Patissoir the host.
Sorry, another technical little moment while we
Yeah, there we go.
Which is you are. So
There we go. So find her. Yeah, find her.
make host. No, I'm gonna make me host. And
Oh, you're gonna. Okay, cool. That's why she's.
That's why she's here.
That's why she's here.
Mhm.
She's the smart one.
Thank you very much, Reverend Berry, for the invitation, firstly, to be here. It's a very special occasion for all of us, but particularly for me as I come for the first time into this church. Thank you very, very much for the invitation on this special day. I've just given as a sort of theme for what I want to say, God's sacred trust. In the book of 2 Samuel 9, verse 8, Mephibosheth is the son of Jonathan, good bosom friend of David. Comes to David while he is king, and he says the following: "What is your servant?" These are the words of Mephibosheth to David. "What is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me?" I mean, there's no way that you can try and humble yourself more than that before the king. And it is believed that in response to that question, David wrote Psalm 8. And in Psalm 8, the 4th verse, are these words, as David thinks about him in relationship to God. "What are human beings that you are mindful of them, mortals that you care for them?" And so he humbles himself before God. And David then goes on to answer his own question in the verses that follow. Let me just read some of it. "You have made them," God made humanity, "a little lower than God, and crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all these things under their feet, all sheep and oxen, also the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the sea." And so that's how David responds to the position that we hold within the universe. Now, what he says in Psalm 8, as he humbles himself before God, in the same way that this young man who happened to have been disabled humbled himself before David, it accords very well with that first creation story that we have in Genesis 1. Because in the 26th verse of Genesis 1, God says, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the flesh of the sea, the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. And so that humility of David accords with that pattern of creation that we have in the first creation story. And so I would suggest that a sacred trust has been put into our hands to take care of and protect the beautiful handiwork of the creator of this universe. All the works of God's hand have been entrusted to our care. The text is very explicit. All the animals on land and in the sea are included in this sacred trust. We are being held responsible. It's inescapable that we are held responsible. God also created plants and the water. All that is included in the sacred trust that we are under. All the contributors that have been identified to result in climate change have been entrusted to us. All of God's creation is our responsibility, that sacred trust. And so we don't escape it. That is our obligation, to understand our relationship to the animals, to all of creation, all of those elements that contribute to climate change. It's our responsibility. The critically important word in all of this is that we have been given dominion over God's creation. And dominion is defined as having supreme authority, absolute ownership. It means we have the power over God's creation, meaning we are in possession of the control over God's creation. We have the authority over God's creation. And so today's service here is a reminder to us individually and collectively that we have a divine appointment, an appointment from God in this sacred trust. We are being held responsible, and we have to be accountable for what happens to God's entire creation that have been entrusted to our care. Based on our faith, we have to be witnesses, and we have to be speaking prophetically about what it is that is happening to God's creation. We have the influence. We have to speak prophetically to those who are in positions of influence, as we have been entrusted to look after God's creation. Mother Earth, that is suffering by virtue of the greed that Reverend Berry has already referred to, that is something that we have to speak to. The animals deserve our protection. We now know enough of their own systems of communication to understand what is pleasing to them and what is their displeasure. If there's anything that the pandemic has taught us, is how the animals came out to take control over their environment that we have moved into. Because as soon as we could not move around, they felt free that they can once again move freely in their environment. And so we have to understand this about our relationship with the animals, our relationship with the environment, because that is what we are responsible for. God certainly takes a dim view of how we have abused this dominion that we have over the creation that has been entrusted to us. I want to conclude by returning to the creation story in Genesis chapter 1. In verse 27 it says, "So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them." And the verse says, "And God blessed them." Nowhere does it say that God gave men dominion over women. Created them male and female, but not dominion. Male and female have dominion over the animals, the plants, the land, and over each other. I trust we are sufficiently disturbed by today's memorial and our commemoration of what has happened to Mother Earth, that we will feel compelled to understand our sacred trust that God has given us, and that we can, through our witness and speaking prophetically to those who are in influential positions, that they have to adopt different policies. We must be disturbed. We must not be happy with what is happening to this sacred trust that has been given to us. May God encourage us to work for a different kind of world, different kind of environment in which we find ourselves. So biblically, it's inescapable. We are compelled. It comes out of the Old Testament, both of these passages that I've referred to. And by virtue of it being in the Old Testament, it means that Christians, Jews, and Muslims, the Abrahamic faiths, can all identify with it and should feel equally compelled to honor that sacred trust. May God bless us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Lowe. You've certainly given us food for thought there, and we appreciate that so much. I'm going to call on my beloved sister, Sister Nita Makanji from the Brahma Kumaris, who's going to bring us a Brahma Kumaris perspective. Bless you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Reverend Berry, and it's absolutely an honor and a privilege to be here. I'm sharing this space, in this beautiful space as well. It's lovely to be back at the Unitarians Church, and I was just sharing earlier that this building, we were chatting, Dr. Lowe and myself. From the front, it doesn't look much, you know, you could easily miss it, but when you step inside, you feel that energy and sacredness, and really the beauty that it holds. So thank you very much for availing this space. I want to start off with a quote of Mahatma Gandhi that I recalled this morning, and you all would be familiar with it, when he said, "The world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed." And so we're familiar with it, yet I wonder if we've really taken stock of that. One of the things I think we can all agree on is that Mother Nature provides in abundance. We are the recipients of that. And yet, what have we done in response? It's something to ask. I'm going to leave that question for you to ponder on. The philosophy that animal life doesn't harm the earth as much as intelligent, I wonder, humans do to their home and environment, is basic to protecting the globe on a larger scale. So from a BK perspective, from a Kumari's perspective, we do feel that the key to protecting the earth or environment lies in transforming society and the inner nature of humans in particular. When we understand what is the root cause of why we find ourselves at the place that we find ourselves, I think we all will agree that there's one common denominator. It's human beings. And so if we want to create a different space, a different world, then that's where we need to start. And the whole element of greed has been mentioned by Rev Berry and Dr. Lowe, but I just wanted to also bring it through that the underlying greed for wealth on the part of developing and developed countries on the pretext of productivity and progress has degenerated the environment beyond redemption. All living species are dependent on the environment for food, air, water, and other necessities. Hence, it is the responsibility of every individual to protect the environment at a time when science and technology have currently not been able to do. So there's many sort of activities that are born and being created, which are absolutely essential. You know, sustainable, subtle activities such as eco-spirituality have been created to strengthen and intensify the connection between human beings and the environment. And such efforts incorporate an intuitive awareness of all life and of the link between the person to the planet, inner to the outer world, soul to the soil, human to animal. And at the key of it, I think, is this understanding that we are interconnected, and it's something Rev Berry also made reference to. I want to bring in another thought or a saying, which you might be familiar with as well. It's the saying that says, "We are what we eat." And again, Rev Berry made reference to this. We understand that the kind of food that we eat has a direct impact not only on our bodies, but on our mind as well. Studies have shown that when an animal is killed for meat, it experiences fear, anxiety, and pain. Its hormonal secretions are then passed on to its consumers. Hence, we ingest that energy. And we know that matter stores memory as well. And so what's the last memory that that animal may have had is something that I internalize if I am engaging in eating that meat. Apart from causing suffering to animals, it's a source of violence-based thoughts and attitudes to its consumers. You know, I was thinking of how we've been faced with these issues for a long, long time. And sometimes we have to examine our own lifestyles, our own values and principles. And we have to ask ourselves the difficult questions. They might be inconvenient, but it's something that we have to ask ourselves at times. And so it's something that I just was thinking of how ironic that meat-eating developed countries of the world have stringent laws when it comes to treating a pet. No, we have cats and dogs. However, in those same countries, millions of animals are killed daily for food. So I'm wondering, surely there's a disconnect in that. And so this, for me, is something of concern. This is something that we need to look at individually, but collectively as well. Then there's the recommendation to find humane methods of slaughter. The contention here is what can be more inhumane than nourishing an animal to kill it? What could be crueler than subjecting animals to a life of captivity that only leads to a merciless end? So these are the difficult questions that I think we have to ask ourselves. Sorry, I'm not here to bring doom and gloom. There are many things that people are doing which is great, but I do find if we want lasting change, then our behaviors and attitudes need to change. And so really the question that I want to put forth is that, do we need a rational argument to realize that killing animals is a form of cruelty, no matter how we package it? A heart that does not sigh at the sight of violence can't be a source of compassion for other fellow men. How do we expect people who do not nurture the feeling of kindness for other living beings to nurture feelings of brotherhood and forgiveness for their own communities? So the core of the Brahma Kumari's work is the understanding of the connection between our consciousness, thoughts and actions, and ultimately our environment. So one of the things that we aspire to do is to create a focus on restoring and strengthening the awareness of the natural harmony between the human and non-human worlds, ethical choices, universal values, and personal transformation. These are required to bring about sustained change. By cultivating an ecology of care, through having care and compassion for the self, we automatically develop care and compassion for nature and all forms of life. The emergence and practical application of these natural values become an inner resource of sustainable energy. And so there's 4 parameters that we look at where perhaps we can integrate this into our lives. One is sustainable lifestyle, adopting a less materialistic lifestyle, one that saves the planet's resources, protects biodiversity, and brings greater well-being. Diet, obviously, vegetarian or vegan food cooked with love, nourishes our whole being and brings inner clarity. It contributes to the health and future of the planet by reducing our carbon footprint and habitat fragmentation by the meat industries. And then meditation, spending time in silent reflection or meditation, helps us connect with our deeper values and find the strength to live by them, enabling us to be more mindful of the impact of our choices. And the last one, peaceful, living really with the energy of non-violence or the awareness of non-violence, promoting and living by the principles of universal peace and non-violence can lead to fewer violent conflicts and wars, thus enabling vast resources to be directed to creating a healthy and sustainable society. Any shift in individual awareness is reflected in society as a whole. To bring stability, resilience, and compassionate action on a global scale, we believe requires an inside-out approach. And this can be the key to the paradigm shift that allows all stakeholders to make choices benefiting the planet and its biodiversity. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Sister Nisha. That was very challenging, and I appreciate that enormously. Lots more food for thought there. Our final speaker of the day is Sheikh Ismail Karan, who his masjid is just up the road in District 6, and we've worked together very harmoniously for some years. It's such an honor to welcome you here. Sheikh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد. To our online viewers, you are greeted with the universal greeting of Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace of the Almighty descend on all of us, inshallah. First and foremost, after the greetings, we thank our Creator for having given us just this manner of existence, just to be here, just to be on this earth. And more than that, to endow us with the intellect to be here this morning, like-minded people, to have a conversation and an obviously deep interrogation of what we are doing to this cosmic speck which we call Earth, what we as humans are doing and have done to it. How accountable do we keep ourselves to it? What's our commitment to it? And how do we engage with it? And for that, Reverend Berry, Reverend Nima of the Unitarian Church, I wish to say thank you very much for inviting me here to be part of this not only auspicious occasion, but a very important occasion, a very scary one. If, as I paid attention to what you said, Reverend Berry, about the amount of species that's become extinct over the past years, it is as if the earth is going into systematic shutdown. And are we going to wait for the earth to become a ghost spaceship on its endless journey around the sun? Or are we going to preempt that by intervening? And I think the intervention starts with occasions like these, discussions like these. And therefore, the topic, what does your faith say about the protection of animals and habitats? And I think the first speaker, Reverend, referring to the Abrahamic faiths and even the wider faiths, because humanity has been endowed with the intellect, with rationality, we have the propensity to choose to do that which is good, beneficial, and of value. Specifically in this manner of what are we as people of faith going to contribute of value in making this earth, making this habitat of ours a safe place or a safer place, a place where generations can enjoy, and then one day, the day of accountability, we can say we tried to do our bit. So on that note, animals and habitat, the ecological web of life on this earth firstly, obviously, our intellect, our rationality tells us, our essence of humanity tells us that it must be treated and engaged with the utmost care, dignity, and respect. If we want to parade across this earth as human beings, as the viceroy of our Creator on this earth. Quranic evidence, and I specifically took some chapters whose names refers to animals, or has animal names. Surah Nahl, the bee. 16th chapter of the Quran, in verses 5 to 8. And I'm not going to quote the verse because it'll take up just too much time. In verse 5 to 8, or verses 5 to 8, in the surah or the chapter, the bee, it speaks about, the Creator speaks about and informs us about animals as a valuable resource and an adornment on the earth. That it forms this adornment, this beautiful tapestry on the habitats on the earth. Then, in chapter An'am, the cattle, the 6th chapter, verse 38, the Quran informs us that animals forms communities and of course gravitates towards a natural order. And of course, science tells us about the natural ecological web that covers the earth, which we as human beings are hell-bent on disturbing and destroying. Then, in the chapter An-Naml, means the ant, it's 27th chapter, verses 18 and 19, speaks about and informs us human beings about how the ants forms colonies and how they interact with their habitats. Absolutely mind-boggling. And then I chose another chapter known as Ankabut, meaning the spider, the 29th chapter. And verse 41 speaks about the frailness of the spider's web. And it compares it with the frailness of our existence on this earth. It connects with the frailness of the ecosystems across this earth, how fragile it is. And any tampering with it can upset that balance or even unbalance it. So this 1, 2, 3, 4 chapters, all referring, or have the names of the animals, emphasizing the importance of the habitat and the animals on this earth. And then there comes a warning in A'raf, the heights, the 7th chapter, verse 56. Do not do mischief on the earth after it has been set in order. And I think that encapsulates the warning. Because the mischief you're going to do is not going to do anything to the Creator. It's going to do horrific things to ourselves, as we are seeing and experiencing. And then, of course, we can say the mercy, the most kind, the name of the chapter, Ar-Rahman, chapter 55, where from verses 5 to 13, where the chapter speaks, As-shamsu wal-qamru bi-husban, that the sun and the moon, they are in exact orbits. It goes on. It goes on, was-samaa rafa'a wada'a al-mizan, about the balance. But for our intent and purposes here this morning, it reminds humanity and informs humanity about the cosmic precision in the heavens and in this universe. The balance, the delicate balance. The earth with its living creatures, its grains, its fragrances of flowers. And then the end of those verses, the challenge comes to humanity. And the Arabic goes like this. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So after all of that, the question is put in a challenge. So which of the favors of your Creator do you still deny, or want to deny, or are denying? And I think, listening to the other two speakers this morning, and of course the synopsis that Reverend Berry gave, that the challenge is there for us. How we are denying this beautiful tapestry that covers the surface of the earth, that covers the heavens, the stars, that shines down, the sun. How we are denying it by having turned and turning in terms of our behavior. The three fundamental manners of behavior, of adab, of the human being. And that is hunger, thirst, and procreation. How we have and are turning hunger into obscene greed, as the other speakers have referred to. How we have turned and are turning thirst into bloodthirstiness, with the brutality, we can even say, the social, psychopathic violence that has gripped and imprisoned the human intellect. And the humanity is displaying this type of horrific, brutal behavior to each other as well as to the environment. And of course, the moralistic manner that religion, that faith guides us not to forsake our humanity. How we have turned and are turning the beautiful manner of procreation into excessive fornication. These are the things we have to think about. And then, of course, another evidence of the scriptures, of the Abrahamic scriptures, of which the Quran is part of, an integral part of it. In the 2nd chapter, verse 27, it says, those who break the covenant with their Creator after they had made that covenant. In other words, there are two covenants that we make with our Creator. The first one is in our subconscious, and the second one is with our conscious mind. In our subconscious, we do not need to go to school to learn to eat when we're hungry, to drink when we're thirsty, to sleep when we're tired, etc. That is the natural manner that we have been endowed with, that powers us. We just do it as natural to us. Each and every human being does that, even the animals. It's in our subconscious. But consciously, we have chosen to be people of faith, to put our trust in the Creator, and to follow the scriptures, where the fundamental denominator of all the scriptures is to do good, to protect. We have a choice, a conscious choice, to do good, to protect, or not to do good and not to protect. And once we break that promise, after we have ratified that promise, the verse then goes on to say, people as such will be identified by 3 characteristics. They will cause breakages, severing of that which is supposed to be linked, whether it's on a family level, communal level, environmental level, and we see it happening. The wars, the enmity, and of course the despicable manner that we are engaging the environment with. They will cause the second one, the second characteristic, they will cause corruption in the land. And don't we have enough of that the world over? And then the last one, such people will be sure losers. Are we losers? Because in our arrogance, our brutality, of whatever, we don't even realize that we are the losers in terms of how we are interacting or engaging the environment. The prophet says to us, in terms of our topic, whoever is merciful, even to a sparrow, the Creator will be merciful to such person on the day of judgment. In other words, the behavior, the enactment or putting into practice the faith that we have promised to follow and the scripture we have promised to follow to build up that faith. And then we have a good deed done to an animal is like a good deed to a human, while cruelty to an animal is as bad as cruelty to a human. And then, of course, a happening in the time of the prophet, after seeing a camel being mistreated, the prophet said, "Fear the Almighty in those beasts who cannot speak." In other words, treat them with kindness and dignity. So, to encapsulate that in terms of our talk thus far, a saying of the prophet, "Kun fi dunya ka'annaka gharib wa abir sabil," explaining to us how the human species should actually move across this planet, interact across this planet, be in this world as if you are a stranger or a traveler, meaning that the earth must be used as a sustainable habitat. It must not be exploited. It must not be have cruelty done to it. And an Arabic idiom that goes something like this: "Ad-dunya mazra'atul akhirah." That this world, for humanity, this world is a plantation for the year after. In other words, to do good, to be kind. That is what we have to plant. We have to plant value. So the balance and the harmony between humans and our interaction with nature, we have to ask ourselves the question, have we and are we moving away from it due to our excessive greed? And in terms of the status quo that we are witnessing today, seeing the evidence in front of us, the way humanity is doing damage to this planet. So aptly, this chapter in the Quran, it's named Al-Kahf, the cave. And the verse 46 in it, Al-Mal wal-Banoon zinatul hayat dunya. Material wealth, the accumulation of material wealth, and the boasting with lineage will blind you to this world. And thus you will use this world in an over-exploitative manner. It hits the nail right on the head. And the chapter so aptly named Cave, because have we retreated into an intellectual cave? Have we closed our thinking into a closed system, where every system in nature is supposed to be and is an open system, an interaction? In other words, have we closed our minds to ideas? Are we forming deserts in our minds, figurative deserts in our minds, that is it's devoid of ideas of progress, and it's been overtaken by greed? There's something to think about. And an anonymous quote goes something like this: it is when we imagine the world belongs to us with absolute rights of ownership that love of the world becomes a great evil. We think the world belongs to us, but in fact, we belong to the world. This body, not the soul, but this body, it's one day going to become part of the very earth itself. So we belong to the earth in terms of our physical manifestation of being here. And starting to end off, I want to quote Alvin Toffler. And he says, illiteracy in the 21st century, which we are in now, will not be people who cannot read and write, but people who refuse to learn, to unlearn and relearn. And that hits us right between the eyes. This is exactly what's happening. We then, my brothers and sisters in humanity, we have to unlearn that we are the owners of the cosmos, but in fact, that this earth, Mother Earth, is our entry point, our gateway to the universal cosmic ecology. Hence, our engagement with this earth, with the cosmos, our commitment and our accountability is so important if we are going to make any impact. And once, brothers and sisters, we are prepared to unlearn and relearn that lesson, we will then begin to understand that our function and purpose on this earth is a divine privilege as the Quranic dictum goes. وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Meaning, and I'm ending up with this, let our cooperation, our engagement with each other and with this earth, with this Mother Earth, be one towards goodness, the establishment of goodness. Taqwa, faith, goodness with faith. What is faith, brothers and sisters? Belief. What is belief? Where's the evidence of it? Faith is made up of two indispensable ingredients, which most probably has receded into the far corners of our minds and forgotten about. And those ingredients, it's only two. It is to be trustworthy and to be truthful. The two ingredients of sincerity. So if our engagement with this earth in its entirety is not going to be sincere, if our commitment is not going to be sincere, if our accountability is not going to be sincere, we are going to enact and apply the second part of this verse, which the Creator warns us here in the Quran. After saying to us, let your engagement be towards goodness and the building up of faith, because that's faith. Once you act with sincerity and conviction, because sincerity brings conviction and determination and confidence. وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. If we're not going to do that, it warns us, and do not cooperate or interact or engage towards transgression, including today, and enmity. And do we not have enough enmity in this world today? So, the question to us is, we have a choice. It starts with conversations like this. How do we engage humanity, our humanity, in terms of engaging this Mother Earth, to become once again, for us and our future in terms of generations to come, a soft place to fall, to love, to enjoy, and to make it a habitat and a plantation for when we have to give an account to that one, that Creator, and that accountability we will never ever be able to escape from. May our efforts of sincerity bear the fruits that will help us and generations to come and be of value to each and every human being. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheikh. That's profound. I did say that it would...
Look at the time, though. We may want to just... I can just do the closing polite prayer, and then we can have some tea and biscuits.
Okay. So, lots to think about, to carry with us as we move towards the end of our service on this day, World International Day of the Environment, and also National Animal Rights Day. Some very profound thoughts and challenging thoughts from all of our speakers. And just to let you know that this encapsulates why SAPC does what it does. We do this because we want people to understand each other and to unite with common purpose to really explore our faiths and look at what it is they tell us about how to take care of the earth and all of life that's in it. People of faith have a moral obligation to really do what it is and to perform God's will on this planet. Of all of our faiths, all of them speak to us about how to care for the earth, to care for all of life. And very often we find ourselves looking at human aspects that are possibly caused by not caring for the earth, but we want to fix the people. And yet we sometimes ignore the fact that all of our faiths speak to us about the earth as well. And so let us take our attention into what God asks of us, why we are on this planet. And thank you to Reverend Dr. Lowe, to Sister Nita, and to Sheikh Karan for really highlighting all of those things today. I'm Reverend Berry signing off and handing over to Reverend Nima for just to bring us to a close. Thank you so much. And thank you for hosting us.
Well, thank you. I want to say thank you to Reverend Berry, but also I want to say how grateful I was when you asked if we could co-host this special event today. And the reason for that is because the SAFC organization takes these challenging ideas and puts them into action. I think of the case they won of stopping a nuclear plant from being built. I look at Sally and see all the important work that she and others did to stop the seismic exploration, that these are important things that we take the ideas and they actually show up in the world as real actions that make a difference. I think also SAFC has a wonderful community gardens program, and I've seen the results of so many communities being able to feed themselves by planting their own food and harvesting it. And so I just want to share my gratitude for SAFC and all the important work that you do. Before I say the closing prayer, I want to point out that on the wall is one of the principles that we Unitarians value. And the seventh principle is that we have respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are part. And so we, as Unitarians, make a commitment to that as we go out in the world, that we are looking for ways to take these ideas and put them into action in our own lives and in our community. So thank you all. I'm going to give a closing prayer about just thinking for a moment about that we are inseparably interconnected and interdependent with all beings on the planet, that just in this moment realize that you are inseparably interdependent and interconnected with all beings as we are with each other. No matter where you are on the planet in this moment, we are still inseparably interconnected and interdependent. So with that thought, I'm just going to say a closing prayer and give us an opportunity that we might take this time to bless all the animals, all the beings, the bees and the spiders, the birds and the fish, regardless of the form, that we would bless all beings with light and with love, that we would wish for all beings to have good health and to live happy and peaceful lives. That we would ask that we seek to understand the lessons and the learnings that all beings, the wisdom that they have to give us, and that we would learn from all beings what they have to teach us. That we would say thank you for all beings and their beauty in so many different forms, that we would commit to cherishing them and their important place in the world. May we appreciate all of the divine creation. May we bless all beings that might be in harm's way or might be sick or lost or suffering in whatever way, that we would wish for all beings to be free from suffering and to be happy. And that lastly, we would thank all beings for the gift of love that we can share with each other to help heal the world. And so may it be. Thank you all. Thank you all who came here today. I'm so delighted to have you in our beloved building. I can just feel the energy that you are sharing with us, making this such sacred space this morning. I thank you all online. I love seeing everybody's names and faces. Thank goodness for technology now bringing so many more of us close together. May you have a sacred and loving day and week and life. Thank you. Thank you all. We're going to have some tea and biscuits. I hope that wherever you are, that you might have a little tea and biscuits and share some ideas with whoever you might be with about how am I going to help the planet today. Thank you all. Lots of love. Oh.
I'm also just popping in to say goodbye and thank you to all of you who've joined us online. Wonderful to see all of you, my colleagues from SAPC, from all across Southern Africa. Lovely, familiar friends and faces. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Happy birthday to Sally.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. We're going to all give her some big hugs here. Take care, guys.
Ciao.
Here we are. I wish I could be there for the tea and conversation. It's a shame. Dave, how are you? Jeannie, I see you there. Oh, your microphone isn't on.
Okay.
You are. On the one hand, I hate not being there. On the other, I'm increasingly conscious of not wanting to make unnecessary trips in the car. It's a challenging thing that I find that driving at all now needs to be on a need basis rather than if I can find other ways to get connected.
Is that because of your knee?
Well, also, I think the cost of fuel has raised the awareness that just putting more carbon into the atmosphere is not anything I want to do. So it's both. I mean, yeah. I mean, on the one hand, being immobilized for a good stretch makes you realize that you don't need to drive around as much. Anyhow, so I guess I won't be making many stops over in Somerset West just gratuitously.
Yeah. Anyhow, good to see you, Carl.
Good to see you both, and hopefully we'll see each other in person before too long.
We hope so too.
That would be good.
All right, well, be well and enjoy this day. And farewell to all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.